YouTube stream. Amazing. It's working? Is it working? Are you working? Hello? It's working. So we start the timer. Wow. We have 8 minutes before the real stream. I was gonna say ends. Begins. It's the shortest stream ever. 8 minutes of stream and nothing else. In only 8 minutes. How many things can you actually say? How much can you actually get through in only 8 minutes of existence, in the very limited amount of life that you get in those very same 8 minutes? What are all the things that you can say? Can you change the life of somebody in 8 minutes? Can you make the world a better place in just 8 minutes? Can something of this sort be accomplished in just 8 minutes? Not really. I will bet it's not possible. But that doesn't mean that I am right. Maybe if you try your best in 8 minutes, enough can happen. Anyway. I was out to I have fucking hair in my mouth. Anyway, very well. Next is also I should actually pay some attention if I keep moving my microphone around. Do you hear that? Does that make itself noticeable in any way? Like unavoidably, you can listen if I keep what's the word of it? If I keep not really noticeable in terms of a noise, but unavoidably out of nowhere I get louder. I get not so loud basically, and that's it. But besides that, there is no other difference. So probably not. You can't really tell if I am moving my microphone around. Like no, there is no other thing that happens if I move the microphone around, which is good. I remember the older microphone, which if I did move around, would for some reason make static noise, like something to do with the cable sending a signal through its own cable. Yeah. And today we are on Freeform 14, aren't we? Yeah, we are. Anything else? No, I think so. Ah, no, okay. I have this. I have to open this. I have to close this. Open this. Set this. Wipe this. Why do we have a 1 in the YouTube? Like, I don't understand streamer bot. At some point, you can finally realize something very funny, and that is, luckily enough, actually, it doesn't really matter what you don't really. Not okay. Sorry, it does matter, but the reality itself is, as long as you actually are trying your best, you end up realizing that yeah, I can see how to fix this problem instead of having such a pain or having so many troubles when it comes to why is this happening at all, why is this being the case and such. So yeah, very good basically. Let me close this, let me open this. Probably, wait, I want to test something. I should mute for all of this, but in this house we unmute for anything. What happens if I keep hitting the standing of the microphone? Can you hear that? Can you? You can't even hear that. Amazing, amazing. Probably I shouldn't anyways do that. Like it's going to slowly make the microphone come looser and at some point drop onto somewhere, and we don't want that to happen. Anyway, we have that. Bido, do you want to capture? Hello? Hi. Hi. No, it's not working. Time to restart. No, 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 no. I almost closed OBS. Beautiful. Open this, minimize this. There we go. Now it's capturing. Green screen this. I don't like to be so big on the screen. What's the point behind that? Can happen. There we go. Is it working? Yeah, it is working actually. Now I have been circling to images so much that I don't know which ones I have already shown and which ones I haven't. We are going to use this one. Today we are feeling like this. This is the representative image of today's mood. Thank you. Are we even testing internet to some degree? I supposedly don't really have to check that anymore for now. Seems to be the case that, luckily enough, everything works well by itself. So, yeah, I don't know. I will be back. Give me a minute. I will go do something before we actually start. I don't know. Anything else? Any other thing? I feel like yeah, I have to, when I come back, I have to set up the phone. But that is for later. Yeah, give me a second. I will be back. I'm back, right, for streaming, not with everything ready, but right enough for being here. Give me, give me a second. Let me actually get the, what's the word? The phone. Thank you. It's actually it's kinda late. Amazing. Okay. Uh, Hello. Today we're going to, for a moment, ponder before actually starting yet again the wonders of Discord on phone. I love. The other day I was even checking it myself because I was like, this cannot be happening, and for some reason, the phone version of Discord some days chooses that, you know what, your messages won't send. No matter how long you wait, how many times you restart the application, how much you try to make it work, how many times you send the same message, it will not send no matter what. Your message in this phone application has no right to be allowed. And it's not like you are, I don't know, utilizing swear words or even worse, utilizing something like slurs to make it so that, oh no, the filter automatically picks this up. It's the most random message ever. It's a simple GIF reaction and it decides to not work. I love this world. And I have both versions open. On one side, I had the PC version open because I was like, what's happening? Why do I see people writing and then the message doesn't exist when they stop writing? And yes, indeed, Discord for phone, ladies and gentlemen, doing the best that it can to be a nuisance. But it's fun. We don't really care about that is. Also, now that I am actually saying this, I had this thought for a bit. Then I don't know. I feel like it's not really that interesting in terms of wow, this changes so many things. But what happened with Discord? Weren't we like migrating from Discord? Weren't we like no, Discord is the demon. We have to get out of here. We have to close this application and never return. What happened there? What exactly went on? I was hoping that something was gonna actually occur. I do like the idea of amazing anti-style. I do like the idea of switching applications or something like that. Yet for some reason that never happened, and I don't even know why. It was actually quite a moving idea. I feel like it's always, I don't know. I'm not really personally, I can say it like this. I don't really like many of the platforms that we have around, many of the things that we utilize to, I don't know, yeah, in general, communicate with others and socialize on and such. I am always down for when the people finally say, it's time to change, it's time to migrate. But then, despite all the uproar that you see, you truly believe that something is going to change, and in the end, you end up with the same things that were happening before and nothing else. Like, I don't know, that was crazy. So many people talking about how much something like Discord was gonna be dead, and how much we needed to find a new platform and similar. And these months passed. Like, I think it happened literally at the beginning of the year. The months passed and no one cares about that anymore. We are not here because we really want to see Discord change. In general, like, that's something funny about systems, universally speaking. Most of what we are, what's the word, attached to, doesn't really change no matter what you want or what you try to do in order to generate that change. And then it feels quite strange to see how at every given instance anyways there is some sort of noise, constant, not exactly background, because it ends up rather even taking the very front, noise about, yeah, this is horrible, this is trash, this has to go, this has to be taken out, this needs to not be anymore and such. And despite that, in the end, things remain very much the same. Not the meme of nothing ever changes, because some modifications are with enough given time made, but the wider sense of there are no real mobilizations of spirits in a more understandable manner. There are no real changes from the communities that seem to be so loud about the things that they are displeased with. Like, for example, trying not to be so universal, returning to Discord. I think I saw like multiple videos with millions of views, like not something that only me and my 3 other friends got to see, with only 5,000 views on YouTube. No, videos that had like millions upon millions of views, multiple of those. About, yeah, the alternatives to Discord. What's going to happen with the Discord? What's the current situation with the new problems that the Discord has confirmed they are going to impose into everyone, and similar things. And despite that, nothing really modified itself. I like to think about it in general because unavoidably it feels strange always to be like, what the fuck? Wouldn't we wanna do something about that? But I don't know. It's funny. I feel like I remember something that I heard quite a long while ago at this point was this idea. At this point I think it has been years actually since I heard it. The whole idea of many times we're going to talk about things like when you see these sort of conversations about modifications that ought to be that are ought to be made in accordance with different issues existing within the given tools or systems in which we operate. Despite the very existence of these conversations, this doesn't mean that we really want any change to happen or that we are entirely willing to impose these changes directly from our very hands. We want a change to exist and be granted to us by other things instead, like trying to put it into something specific. Probably people would have actually migrated to Discord if something like the very developers of Discord did provide the users, its user base, with tools like, yeah, you know what, today, because we have seen the reaction from the community, we are going to offer all of you some tools that will let you migrate to other platforms. It's something along the lines of the whole, because I don't want to react. No, because I won't react to what you are saying, we end up all calming down far more than if I indeed provided you with any sort of reaction. The whole PR training that such companies, or not companies, the whole way in which bigger names, so to speak, in this case it does apply to a specific company, but the more general sense of in media training, it's quite a useful notion to understand that sometimes if things get bad enough, there is nothing better than to not say anything at all. Not just to make some allegations or try to go and name yourself towards these opinions that you are seeing. The better thing to do is to just ignore everything like it doesn't even exist and continue with your day. And when that happens, it somehow can actually work. The whole idea of, culturally speaking, things last very short, for a very short amount of time sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. AKA most of the time, actually problems don't really exist as problems for so long that everyone is actually being threatened by those things. In some cases, it actually lasts so short that, indeed, if you didn't react to it, you contributed to its incredibly short existence. And thanks to this, then, yeah, stuff like the whole... It wasn't really drama, it was just the more general sense of what the fuck? The general discomfort of the Discord user base being understood as, I don't really want to see this. Like, for example, thinking about this, I didn't even give a proper explanation. I assumed that everyone would be understanding what the fuck I'm talking about. The whole idea, more and more in perspective. I come back to this 5 years from now and I have no fucking clue what I'm talking about. Okay, the explanation is at the beginning of 2026, something happened with Discord where it, for some reason or another, they imposed ID verification. The whole thing, as always, of this new application, which has nothing to do with governments, which has nothing to do with an entity of that sort, now requires you, mandates its user base to provide legal ID to create an account. And it was also, it wasn't just the problem of that happening. That's the surface level annoyance and discomfort from the community. Everyone saw that, and then the questioning started like, as always, this becomes the eternal, we're doing it for the children. But at the same time, it wasn't entirely obligatory. Like, even then, kids supposedly could still anyways create accounts for some reason. Like, they only wanted to monitor who was a children, not to actually remove them from their platform, but just to have it in their database or something strange like that it was. And besides the strangeness of the statement, the discontent was, okay, we don't really want to be under a fucking data harvesting app. So from here on out, from the beginning of 2026 until the very end, we are going to slowly migrate to other places. That was the general agreement about that. Supposedly, like at the very, very, like, I don't know, I am talking, let's assume, I don't even remember when, let's assume this happened in January, okay. By the very end of January, once the situation had happened, and like 1 or 2 weeks passed, the common idea was, okay, we're going all to move out. And the reality is, now, right now, 6 months after those events and such, no one even talks about that anymore. No one cares. And it's, in this case, it's not even because it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know, I do actually agree with that opinion. I at some point I said, yeah, I actually like that. I actually find it quite interesting. I don't enjoy, from my personal perspective, I don't really enjoy applications which require you to operate from outside its given tools to actually make modifications on it that would improve your user experience. To begin with, like, personally speaking. So with just that already, I prefer anything that can actually let you directly modify what you're doing instead of having to go through the whole loop that is Discord and its whole, yeah, you know what? If you want to utilize add-ons, you don't have anything on Discord. The add-ons exist outside of Discord with third-party applications and third-party things. So just with that already, more than convinced, we say that we are moving out of Discord, more than agreeing with the notion, let's all do that. And what ended up happening? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I don't know, I find it strange. I have an acceptance or a minimal degree of understanding. Like, I already explained the whole effect of the previous things. Of, yeah, when a drama of any sort happens, the media training is, when a drama of any sort happens, the parties involved will do better unless they actually have an absolutely clear, astoundingly solid answer to shut it down. It is the better thing always to say nothing. So you make sure that you make no comment on the situation and you continue with your life if possible, so that everyone can move on organically, so to speak. Even if the very act of not at all addressing the elephant in the room makes it not at all organic anymore. The organicness given by the fact that you are slowly trying to move things ahead, to keep things going, makes it so that then the boat can keep sailing, so to speak. And That's the understandable part. Like, I don't need an explanation for that anymore. But why something that is supposedly worrisome gets not at all cared? Like, why? I don't know. It sounds. I think it doesn't really need that much of an explanation. I personally feel like if you were capable of explaining it to the average person, anyone could understand. You know what? I don't really feel like agreeing with this. As in, because this comes from the side of there is this conversation going on about any kind of surveillance gone onto the not community, what is it? Onto the population, onto the population, is not really done so much for the sake of actually keeping things in check sometimes to truly keep things safe around everything, but rather in the modern world, in our current society and such, a problem has become quite recurrent, and that is the surveillance levels that we are slowly getting to experience have gone out of control, and we stopped having the possibility of just talking about a form of surveillance which tries to maximize the safety of people. It rather is the surveillance done in order to keep the very system which generates this surveillance in place. Like, let's say it with an example of the Asimov laws of machines, of systems and such, and it them being the first one of them, this machine should not harm its creator. Okay, when you get to these points in time where the actions that are being taken don't really generate any kind of benefit on the people, but rather only allow the very existence of the system itself, which is promoting these actions, you can very much, to some degree, admit. I mean, it doesn't really sound that well. Being honest, it sounds bad because it's not something so directly talked about, but the reality doesn't stop being that. Suddenly, the truth is, we are all then thus just agreeing with this overarching problem. And we are all here doing nothing in order to try to change that. We are all nodding along in acceptance with the given situation, and we are all being complicit in the act of being put into this place. And thus, the system itself sustains its very own existence, but it slowly starts, like most systems in general, will at some point become stale enough to deserve to be modified and changed into something better. Like, in more general standards, one of the biggest problems that exists with morality is, can we entirely define the rules of morality in any given point of time? Yes and no, because in the end, the reality still is, while we will do so at any given specific moment, like, more specific language, while we can try to do such things right now, and we might as well get to do that right now, in this very moment, this will only serve for this very present instance of existence. 50 years from now, things ought to change in ways in which those new given moral questions and moral answers are capable of applying to the given conditions of those specific times. At different instances, there are moments in which you have to be capable still of recognizing where things ought to change, yes, but the very change of these things doesn't get allowed unless you are willing to admit that there could be something that requires to be modified, so to speak. And in this very same mentality, the rules that we utilize to have systems of power and such, without even having to say, yeah, this kind of political view or this other one is wrong. I don't really care about that. The more general notion of, or yeah, it might be a topic of sorts, but I am not really trying to aim at that right now. I don't really care about that specific idea at all. What I do care about is the whole aspect of unavoidably, simply because you have to try in one way or another to allow modifications to exist and allow things to order around what you want to get out of the stuff that you do and such, because that has to happen, and because you have to, in one way or another, make sure that things are, once again, moving along. Then any given system has to constantly be adapting and transforming itself, even if, let's say like this, with more specific notions, even if we are still operating under capitalism, for example, right now, compared to the capitalism of 50 years ago, we are nowhere near what the rules of capitalism were. The very system itself has modified itself. Even if we are still inside the internet system, we are nowhere near the very same internet that existed on the very first days of the World Wide Web. Systems keep changing, and it's a natural given of existence. And the problem is, in one thing, is a system which exists organically, and another thing are the systems consciously created by human beings, aka most of what has to do with politics and such. And sadly, when that occurs, when that becomes the case, then something happens, and it is any given system, not always, but any given system will prefer to remain in charge, even if it is for the detriment of what this very system is doing. Any given self-conscious system, let's say like that, will prefer to not abandon its position of authority rather than to remove itself from where it has been placed, in order to allow other, newer systems to finally operate and modify things around. And the point was trying to tie what I told, because this came from the whole idea of, the problem being Discord, enforcing all users, because the idea was even older accounts will require to have ID verification. So, given that this might be the case, then the enforced surveillance, once again, stops serving just the safety of its users. I already said it when I was explaining it at the very beginning. There was an incredibly huge problem with this when Discord said it, and that is, it won't really make it so that underage users stop having access to Discord. The enforcements put in place in the application were done so just in order to have surveillance over its user base and nothing else. The required verifications and all of that were not being created in order to avoid something like, I don't know, 15-year-olds from getting to finally utilize Discord. Therefore, getting rid of the problem of minors in the virtual space so present. No. The situation was, okay, we're just going to keep it in check. What's happening? Why is that? Everyone was capable of realizing that And that was the main point of why, okay, we should, in one way or another, try to avoid this being so. Because we can see that it isn't being actually done for the sake of safety of its user base. It is, yet again, the same thing of, yeah, we are collecting data and we are going to, the eternal, even more so with a private company like Discord and such, the whole aspect of, yeah, I give you my ID and tomorrow it might as well be found in a random database of an ad company because you're a private company and you can do whatever the fuck you feel like you're doing within the laws. And one of those many laws is you can sell that data to other companies. So I cannot really force you to not to do that, sadly. And such things, people were capable of realizing that, like the whole discourse existing around let's move out of Discord itself was, this isn't being actually done in favor of the user base. This is happening in a very detrimental way. And we get this to not occur at a response. I don't know. I feel like people were capable of saying, yeah, we might need to actually get out of here. But I feel like the only consideration that I have thus far is there is this other idea, the always, like, it's eternally present whenever you're dealing with situations in general. The loud minority concept of, yeah, the majority sort of, we all exist within rules and notions that guide our existences and such. So one of the many problems that occurs when we are found within the rest of our environment is that in the majority of, in the groups of majorities, there will be a given situation, and that is suddenly that we are all going to agree on things implicitly. We are going to all implicitly have things be the case and have things be understood as working and such. And because this is so, we end up forgetting that it is sometimes actually necessary to just have a sort of actual communication, all this stuff. Therefore, when you hear an opinion, not always, but sometimes, or sorry, most of the time, it comes from the loud minorities, which don't conform to the norm. Like, once again, let's move out of Discord. I haven't saying, the whole point has been out of Discord so far, so maintaining myself on that. If we have to move out of Discord, that opinion comes from an outside place, and that opinion is generated by this outside sphere, and this very same outside sphere also has the situation being of. And if we have to try to modify this, if we have to try to not let this be, how many people actually care about this? It might as well be the case that only, once again, this very small minority cares about that. No one else has, like the rest, the silent majority has no desire at all to modify this situation. And the issue is, you might never entirely know how much of a, in cases like this one, you don't really get a proper taste of something like what is the proper minority and majority, like in more understandable terms. In the case of something like what happened with the Discord discomfort, once the ID verification was given out, not given out, but you know what I mean, was tasted as a new feature, was that for one reason or another, we heard probably even millions, you consider this, you heard even perhaps millions of people say something about that But it might as well still be the case that even then, millions don't reflect the actual reality of this in terms of it might as well be the case that there are, I don't want to say hundreds of millions, because that feels like crazy. Can I actually see that? Like, let me see this piece of information. How many users does Discord have? Is there any 200 million? What the fuck? 690 million all-time registered users and 200 million monthly active users. Holy fuck. So yeah, okay. So this actually makes far more sense than what I was thinking about at a very first glance. Amazing. Okay, so the explanation then is, even if you hear millions talk out that, it might still be 1% or less. Like, depending on who you ask, this comes down to a problem of actual specific definitions, because welcome to sociology, many terms don't really have entirely definite set in stone numbers. For some people, the minority extends to the 5%. To some other people, the minority is still something like the 20%. And for some other incredibly strong-haired people, minority is up to 49.9999999 and such. So yeah, the problem in itself is, who knows? Perhaps, but anyways, the reality is, even then, we didn't even hear. I feel like not even a 10% of the actual Discord community might as well have actually cared about this problem, which is crazy. Makes sense to some degree. That also explains the whole fact that, therefore, there wasn't enough of an uprise out. Yeah, this is a problem. We have to get the fuck out of here. Nobody actually cares about that. If only such a handful of people realize this, and only a handful of people have this realization and have this moment of, wow, I want to get out of here. I want to not have anything to deal with this upcoming issue. That doesn't mean that 1%, it's not an entirely certain thing, but in this case, that 1% wasn't capable of persuading the remaining 99%, let's say. But yeah, it's crazy. I have to believe that from that 1%, or I don't know, let's be a little bit more generous, from that 5%, maybe a little bit of that did actually finally migrate out of that platform. I will believe that did happen, but even then, there is no more discourse about that anyhow. Like, people still knows that it is those people, within those, even people like me to some degree, like, I am somebody who's actually still speaking about this problem. You might as well still consider me a minority. I didn't actually move on with my life and forget about what happened and got the benefit of just ignoring what I do even still categorize as an issue. So yeah, I can still fall under the minority group in that sense. Some of the proper minority, the more willing to actually do something minority, change the situation. But after that, I don't know, that's a more general, or a far more superior question of sorts. Why? You saved yourself. Why not try to go back to save others? I don't know, I have to agree. It's always a difficult question. Like, morally speaking, for some reason, no matter how many years have passed since the discovery or evolution or the gift of consciousness, however you want to think about that, we still haven't found an entirely set answer as to why certain things are or aren't. And in this case, I feel like, yeah, certainly, it might as well be a possibility and even so a desirable thing to try to make it so that, okay, you understand that Discord is a horrible thing, you want to find a solution to that, why not go back to try to slowly convince users? And I don't know, there is still, to not be entirely nihilistic in terms of, yeah, they are all the implicit, because the implicit message there ends up being, yeah, those are, well, those are were selfish bastards who only saved themselves. No, no. The reality is, I don't really have an answer, and one of the few things that I have to admit, this is the funny thing about problems of this sort. Welcome back to the conversation about surveillance and such. System, the ruling system in power currently will try to also make sure that it can sustain itself by silencing those voices which are the easiest to attack without any other precedents, without any other issue arising out of that action. So, what are we going to do? We are going to thus ban any single individual who is a known name trying to convince other people. That's the most basic kind of idea in this case of, yeah. So what happened? Perhaps they even tried to say something about, oh wow, brothers and sisters, people of the world, Discord is trash, people of this server, Discord is trash, let's move out of here. No, you know what happened? They sent that message, somebody else who had nothing to do with that, somebody from the rest of the majority, saw that, heard what seems to be a completely schizophrenic person out of nowhere saying something completely out of line almost, and hit the report button. And even if it wasn't deserved, even if it wasn't morally correct, the ban ended up still being imposed, and the sanction still ended up happening for that individual, so that they have no more any possibility of doing anything for what they actually care about. Like, you don't really have to assume sometimes. If you're talking, yeah, it actually makes more sense like that. Sadly, in moral dilemmas of that sort, you don't really get to. I said that you don't have to. You don't get to. If you understand enough, you don't get to actually freely assume that people are selfish. You have to always also consider how much of an oppressive system do you actually live in sometimes. How much of a system willing to sustain itself are you held in, basically? And in that question lies the answer once again of, and maybe people do try to change things around, but it's far easier to just silence them than to satisfy any other any kind of complaints that they have. Something like for example, continuing with this, something funny that happens still with all of these ideas and such is something incredibly comedic about, okay, and we see that there is a loud minority present at the revelation of this, or next step, the evolution for the sustainment of this system. If we see that, and we see a little bit of pushback, sometimes we don't really have to change things around. Something funny that happens is, you know what, we will wait a little bit, and we will announce this yet again as if it was anything different somehow, and see how many people can now finally agree with this, like something unexplainable about the human consciousness. Sometimes, even if things are wonderful, attitudes that we have about the stuff that happens doesn't really change things around. Like, for example, one of the things that upset have upset me the most when I saw it for the first time was that there was this guy who found a cure for one of the types of cancer, and one of the incredibly annoying things that came out of that was, and that guy, he was an older person, so not only did he get targeted because he was an older head, aka a grandpa still doing science, but also he had some sort of malformation in his face, so he was also getting targeted for that. And the funny thing was, it was annoying as fuck to see nobody caring actually about the notice itself, about the new, about the important thing, but the entire persuasion towards this other event, this other reality out, yeah, an ugly face doing something meaningful, wow, and trying to apply what I just explained. It might happen that it was, for some random reason, history lends itself to sometimes coincidences can actually happen, like people can entirely ignore what you're trying to say and completely disregard what's the important thing, even if it is actually in any way meaningful. So it's better to just wait a little bit and announce it again a little bit later on to see what happens. And because of that, because this went on, you might as well see, returning to Discord, you might as well see that, I don't know, maybe next year they announce it again, or they announce it in a different place, because I think it wasn't an entirely definite thing, like, I think it was in only a handful of countries that it was happening. Discord itself wasn't releasing it for all the planet, the feature of, yeah, you know what, we have to impose this new feature. We have to make sure that this changes and such, and therefore all the human population gets to learn about that. It was, as always, one of the many funny things that happens is, I don't know, I think that comes with the advantages of technology nowadays. It might as well have always been a thing, but nowadays that we are all hyper connected and such, it is far easier to do, because we can slowly get features and upgrades inserted into our services. It is easier to slowly roll out things. Why? Let's make up an example. We have a player base of 100 players playing our game. We had a feature that might not be entirely well liked. If we were to impose it on all our players, it might not be all that well received by those 100 players in my game. So what are we going to do? We're going to find the very first player, the very first person to whom we can invite to test this thing out early and see how they can accept this. Then from this point onwards, we can go to, let's say, a little bit bigger player base of perhaps 10 more players, and now show them, not only do we have this feature, we also have the opinion of these other players, just like you know, wow, you're just like this guy, so why would you not trust his opinion and such. It's basic persuasion tactics, aka, and by doing so, then you can convince not only the first player, but also those other 10 players, so you get to slowly have, gradually, perhaps 11% of approval from what was, if you were to release it universally for all of them, a negative response. Now you have at least an 11% which is willing to say, yeah, I don't really care about this, it's good. It didn't change my life in any kind of way negatively, so it's fine. And then you get to slowly increment that gradually, so that at some point you can finally make it so that you surpass something like the 50% mark. And once you do that, you have a certain benefit extra added to you. Let's say you keep doing that, like gradually you keep incrementing it. You go from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 20, and from 20 to 40, and from 40 to 60. Once you have more than 50%, you have a certain benefit added to your toolkit now too. And that is, if this person, this singular individual, is not going to really agree with me, I don't care a fuck about your opinion. I don't care a fuck about what you're saying. And I don't want to even hear what you have to say, because this is something that the majority now likes. So you are the problem here. So if you don't like it, you have to fuck off from here. And we can enforce you to get out of here. We can force you to take a decision of sorts. So if you are not going to willingly be a participant of this, even more so, you dare to pronounce yourself on this matter, here you go, banned. And that's when problems start to arise. Because, once again, I don't really know how many people operate under that sort of belief. And even more so, like, how it is slowly progressing. I have been talking about Discord for way too fucking long. Like, I actually care that much about it. But it has been useful to also explain many other concepts, I guess. Returning to it. And I don't know, yeah. It sadly also has the whole deal of Terraform. Now, I think I finished explaining the basic idea, because in the end, the most important aspect, the conclusion is, once you have enough approval, you also get the tool of removing those who are there to argue against you. Even if they are right, even if you knew from a beginning that there was going to be somebody who is going to say something negative about what you are proposing or what you are directly implementing. If you do so, if you do it consciously enough, you can actually implement things without having to care about those who will say bad stuff about that. You don't get a pushback. Like, let's say like this. A different example will be something, or an example that can illustrate this from a different perspective is something like League of Legends. Surprisingly enough, because League of Legends has this custom of pushing updates and such forward without caring that much for the player base, sometimes they push a certain change into places like the player beta environment, aka PvE, the server where things are going to be tested before actually being enforced. And after that, they will finally ship those updates to the live servers. Because this happens in that way, there is that select group of people who can test out their things and say, wow, this new implementation is actually trash anyways. And from that point onwards, they can still get pushback and not have the possibility of actually implementing that. And sadly, because this happens in such a manner, sometimes they have to retract from certain changes. Or, more so, because they don't entirely apply such rules, they believe that changes that they made in the PvE are well received, and once they ship them to the general public, they end up being entirely rejected by the general, far wider community of the game itself, not just the beta. So they have to take actions that keep their player base satisfied, and they don't get to just slowly convince others of changes that are going to happen. This doesn't mean that it is always going to be the case. They still, like, una voy a abrir. Here is the parenthesis. When you're talking about something like a riot and whatnot, they still take incredibly strange decisions. The entire player base isn't satisfied with something like Seasonal changes. I am pretty sure most players would have never liked things like the addition of multiple dragons. If you were to have asked before this change was made, people would have preferred to have one dragon than to have 4 or 5 or 6 different dragons and to have to learn all of that. So yeah, sometimes they still take risks and such, but at other times they still are forced to listen to the community and make those changes not be. But returning to the real point, sadly, the reality still is that in most cases anyways, people are anyways forced to agree in this case, because Discord doesn't have that system of, oh, okay, we can say no. Discord doesn't exist in that. They took that other approach of, yeah, we're slowly going to increment the different populations which have to deal with this, until once again we can finally dish out the result of not having at all to suffer with those who say no from the very beginning, who can then make others also agree with them. No, we can slowly increment safely enough or acceptance rate through other methods until we have the majority on our side. And this also comes in handy. Because I have also heard, throughout the years, I don't really like to talk about it because I don't really feel like it's that much of a conversation that we need to have here. I am not somebody who cares that deeply to make it one of the topics that we have to talk about here most of the time. But in this case, it does come in handy. One of the communications that we lost access to, one of the methods of communication that we lost access to, was virtual spaces in terms of new news places. Things like, not diaries, but newspapers and media channels. What are they called? TV channels, which also dished out the news of the day and such. We slowly lost access to all of those groups, which informed the populi with the important things in the race against or towards the implementation of AI, rather, the popular generation. I said popular generation. The popular community, I guess. I don't actually know which word went there. I forgot. The popular civilizations, let's say, the populi, once again, the rest of the people lost access to those mediums and such, and because AI took the center place in such conversations, and now sadly we live in spaces, or to be more clear, to not make it so theoretic and such, things like news slowly shifted from being made purely by people to being made by different companies which utilize AI for different reasons. We're not strictly talking about why that is the case, why that matters at all. The point is that this happened, and because this occurred, it became the case also that then, now we don't have the access to make it so that other people can realize, oh wow, this doesn't matter, or this doesn't matter. This is the news that we want to see and that we want to hear. There was an expression. This one is years old, like I think, decades old actually. The revolution will not be televised. You know that one? The expression talks about how sometimes the real changes don't get shown in such medias, more so in this kind of conversation. Sadly, at this point in time, the news spaces and such, the anchors which should have made it so that everyone got to see, yeah, this is a glaring problem, this is a disastrous situation for all of us, only say, yeah, and more news in or flash news, and this stupid tiny gaming company called Discord has implemented for their product the need to utilize what is it? Verification, ID verification for its user base. More news at 5. Something so incredibly short that they can the discourse. We go back to the central idea of main population and agreeing majority and such. Sadly, the majority ends up learning that yeah, this is going to happen, and just from that, then the discourse becomes, yeah, this is going to inevitably be the case, and this is not something that we ought to in any way change, and this is something that we ought not in any way to make different. And I don't know, I feel like to some degree, in a way, it actually has the side of it's incredibly sad that it is the case, because it gets to be the flash news gets to, even if we don't have access to the control of those things, we still have or places to talk about such things. We live under authoritarian places to have conversations online, yeah, but we are not entirely forced to agree with every single person, nor we are forced to agree with the ruling system in its entirety. We still have certain boundaries to operate and such, and I feel like it's strange to see. This is my conclusion. I feel like it's strange to see. Thus, so much of the people, once again, could. The new itself is shown as, yeah, Discord will enforce IDs from its user base, and the people can say, even if they don't like it, even if you don't agree with that, you can say that. You don't have to always agree with the thing that the news show and such. You're not forced right now in this current timeline, at this exact point in history. You're not forced to say, yeah, this is going to be, and I have no power over that. This is what's going to happen, and I just have to prepare myself in a more. That sounds acceptable. I'm not being visceral enough to some degree because it sadly doesn't feel entirely right. But let me try for a second to appeal more to their consciousness. In a world in which I want to have my things and possess what I really like, I don't have to always agree with the stuff that is completely atrocious to my own existence. I am not forced to open up wide and get entirely fucked by things that are going to destroy my very life in ways in which I am not going to enjoy. The ways in which I get to live, thanks to these very changes, which I can in no way resist being imposed onto me. I am still allowed to, in one way or another, let modifications not be implemented, yet somehow we live still somehow believing and agreeing with the utter notion of, yeah, you know what, there is this completely atrocious virus that is going to be implemented into the entirety of society, and we all just fucking nod our heads without even trying to make it look like we can understand that it's going to have negative consequences on us. and more so, returning, once again, returning to the more normal conversation. And because this happens, I feel like it's strange, because I don't live in my own bubble, or in my own existence. I don't have to see anyone else. I have seen other people who were far more popular also say, ah no, yeah, and this is bad. Why the fuck did nobody do anything about that? Like, why did so many popular content creators also come out and say, ah yeah, Discord ruling out this thing, being such a bad, not ruling out, slowly rolling out this new implementation, being such a negative thing, still do nothing. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. I have an actual hard time because I don't really understand what can be compared with that. I live, the example is this one. I live in my house with my brothers. Our mom puts a stove to slowly boil, and one moment I am sitting next to the stove with the pot of boiling water now, and at some point my brother comes to me and forces my hand into the boiling hot water, and I, instead of trying to get it out, I say, oh no, it's so terrible, it's going to damage my hand so much, it's so sad. Am I stupid in some way? Do I have some kind of difficulty with some sort of, I have some problem of some kind? I don't understand it. Shouldn't the natural reaction be, ah yeah, you know what, even if you're my brother, even if I believed that you cared for me, I'm going to hit you straight in the face, I am going to get my hand out of the boiling water, and I am probably even going to move away from there, in order to avoid having a second instance of you doing something so stupid. Isn't that the natural reaction? Isn't that the acceptable, expected reaction? Why is the norm that we live so much under that same condition of, ah yeah, we get slowly, it's not our entire hand, figuratively speaking, but it is each one of our fingers, it is each one of our extremities at points getting slowly boiled, not slowly, getting put into the entirely boiling water, and the fucking reaction remains, ah yeah, you know what, it's so sad, it's so over. What the fuck? Why is that the case? Why do I... How can I be so powerless in this world? How can I be so negative and so absolutely useless for all of the things that I care about myself, to the point to which I become an actual problem to my own existence, instead of solving the situations that put me into so much harm and that make me so discomforted and such? It's amazing to see that. That's what annoys me. If you're not going to do anything, why the fuck do you say that it is bad? If you're not going to change anything, why the fuck do you have to come out and give your opinion in terms of, ah yeah, do you know what? Discard, yeah, it's going to implement. Or, guys, Discord is going to implement ID verification, and we should all agree that this is bad. What the fuck is the point behind just doing that? It's the naivety of the belief of, ah yeah, and if we all say strong enough that this is the case, maybe Discord will come and save us. Oh dear Lord and Savior, Discord, please don't make it be the case. What the fuck are you thinking about? It's incredibly beautiful how much... The only conclusion that I can directly have in that sense is, somehow we're incredibly still childish enough to believe that we are going to be saved by such actions, because if we can all see that it is bad, and we can all agree that it is negative, what the fuck are we actually doing by simply stating the obvious? What's the point in staying in that just that stance instead of doing anything. And that's why I myself also feel like it is so pointless to some degree to talk about such things. What's the change? Ah, yeah, we have to migrate. Migrate where? To what, brother? To find ourselves in an incredibly empty land because no one else gives a single fact, to try to talk about it without us, to find ourselves silenced because once again, I already took out my sweet time to explain it. I try to show other people that Discord is trash, and don't dare I do that on Discord itself, because I might as well get entirely deplatformed from that side. And isn't it funny that it is so habitual for this to happen almost everywhere? But anyways, point is, and I don't know, I find it amazing to see how much of this occurs like that. I feel like it's surprising to get to the conclusion that, yeah, in the end, it meant nothing actually. And something about the real conclusion lies a little bit more along the lines of, and sadly, no matter how hard I want to actually believe in humanity, these kind of events are what slowly makes me lose, like, even a 0.1% of hope. That's enough loss of hope for me to feel bad about it. Why the fuck are we actually incapable of changing things? Why the fuck are we capable? Are we willing to actually do nothing about these things? Why the fuck are we actually agreeing with such things? How the fuck can that be the case that nobody here? I see something wrong, and I do nothing. Isn't this the exact same situation that I have been thought for so long should be something that I feel inclined towards acting, towards trying to do something for the sake of that? Isn't that what I, in one way or another, should aspire to not let it be? Where is my human spirit? Where is my interest in the rest of humanity? But I don't know, it's part of the human experience. You can see it like that. And at some point or another, it just so happens that we keep being like that we keep operating like that, and that perhaps any other modification in accordance with those rules ends up being deemed as unnecessary, even if it is entirely required, even if it is entirely meaningful in one way or another. It's wonderful how little all of that actually means somehow. Ah, yeah. Ah, Nate? Carrots? Ah, welcome. I get the shock. It's a horse. mm. Yeah. But it's fine. It needs to calm down, actually. It's good enough. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really try to think out those things. Okay, what I can actually say about that, I feel like it's part of the human experience. It's very much part of what's bound to happen. You slowly, this is a different theory. You see enough in the modern world, like it has to do also with the news and such, with media, with that sort of mass media and similar. One of the notions that comes to mind is the whole aspect of how we slowly get desensitized towards other more meaningful things. By the continuous exposure to even the smallest of those factors, you ensure the person, like, let's say like this, by me slowly, the analogy would be, the first time I tap you in your cheek, you're going to care. The thousandth time in the same day that I tap you in your cheek, you're going to not care at all. And by me continuously doing that every single day, at some point, not only you will not care when I do it with one finger, you might as well not care when I do it with one entire hand. And at some point, as long as it is progressive enough, the escalation towards even worse results, you might as well find out that somehow I can actually even get to punch you without you caring about that at all. So, in this case, how does this actually apply? The conversation is out, or it began on the whole Discord situation with ID verification. So, it is yet another instance of desensitization about things that one ought to care about. I realize that I don't have the power to do anything, and now I can feel a little bit frustrated, because this is one of the few things I get to slowly, let's say like this, I have been growing up as a person, I have been growing up as a human being, and now I am finally starting to slowly enter the realm of quote-unquote adulthood. So now I am slowly feeling like I ought to do something in such situations, but the reality is something else. The truth lies somewhere else. The necessary action and such is not found in that place, is not found in those things, is not found in those aspects. It's somewhere else with other things, with other parts and such. And as long as I don't really care about that, as long as I don't really try to modify that, as long as I remain unwilling to do that, and unwilling to actually make those modifications, then I will keep being in one way or another saying, yeah, you know what, I won't make this not a be the case, I won't make this not, I finally will stop having the inclination towards things in one way or another, even if I know, or if I knew on the first glance that I ought to not have that feeling on me, that I ought to not have that sensation on me. I will remain believing that until enough time passes so that I can then finally give up on that and say, you know what, I might as well not need to act in such conditions. And that's the fun of this, so to speak. That's the fun of how these very situations operate. It's, in one way or another, actually, it is incredibly sad, because you don't really know how many of those have actually occurred throughout life. You might as well not be capable of truly realizing how much it is that they ever, not every single day exactly, but throughout the days, throughout life, basically, we keep encountering such things until at some point we end up finally then conceding that this is not something that I should in any kind of way modify, and I am fine with this, even if it hurts me, or even if it could be something that I could change myself, because that's how we have become with enough given time. That's how we all, that's where we are all headed towards, supposedly. But it's life, I guess. I don't know, man. But I don't know. It's way too hopeless. That's not really the entire point of this. I guess the reality, if I have to say it like that. The reality is that in way too many times you can okay. This is actually a more appropriate condition for the conversation to continue in any kind of positive light actually. Sadly, the realization of the problem doesn't make it so that you have to instantaneously abandon the situation itself. Rather, as long as you realize what the problem is, you're given the possibility of then continuing with the solution, like, or proceeding towards an actual solution instead. As long as I can actually see what happens, and I can admit what the situation in itself is, I am not forced to remain in the position of, in this case, I am not forced to remain powerless. I can do so, but that doesn't mean that I ought to be powerless. That doesn't mean that I need to be powerless. It only means that it can happen, but not that I have to be. One way or another, capable of believing on things. The negativity, let's say like that, the negativity of the world might make me feel like I have in one way or another to orient myself towards those things. I have to never I don't require rather to agree with those notions. Even the negativity of the world as it gets presented is not something that I ought to say makes sense, simply because it is spread so much around the world. But I don't really try to change much. I don't really try to change many of the things. I don't really try to be in any kind of way different. That's the wonder of the world, rather. That I learn so much to have nothing different from what the world imprints on me. So many of those messages, it falls under the same line of what I said before, of this is going to be what happens, and you don't have to have any other thought about it yourself. That's not how things have to operate, actually. That's not how stuff needs to be. I can agree, actually. I can agree. I don't think I have ever actually heard that much this idea, but yeah, in current times, the human spirit is at an all-time low, sadly. And this being the case makes it so that most of us ends up having all of those situations arise and all of those encounters with thoughts also be there. I should not truly believe, and I shall not truly be willing to let so much be imposed onto me. The human experience is far wider and different than what I can ever imagine, even myself. But by not allowing that to be, by not allowing that in any kind of manner to get modified, I end up entirely making it so that we are all, in one way or another, forced to, for no real reason, follow these very same rules. This, my compliance, and despite the sadness that it brings to me, the continuous existence of mine can lead to others also getting convinced that it is fine to become compliant with things. Because I think it applies in this case more than in any other, the whole monkey see, monkey do aspect of. But if I don't really have to think that deep, if I don't really have to spend that much time analyzing anything, if I don't really have to waste my soul or my hopes or my dreams or my nights or my days or my hours or my life in any way trying something else, then if I can just be compliant like the person next to me, why not just do that? Why not just have that be the case? And take joy in that fact. Find happiness in that very same reality and nothing else. And the conclusion so far is way too negative. Fuck. I don't really know how to change it. I mean, I feel like that's to some degree the conclusion itself. There is not much more to conclude like that. Sadly, no matter how much you want things to not be of that sort, if you're forced to have stuff operating that manner, if you're forced to have stuff just exist in that kind of way and similar, then what can you really do in that sense? I cannot really make you not be compliant, let's say. I can give you the tools. The whole perspective becomes, in this case, okay, this is where it actually gets interesting, let's say. That this much is understandable. No matter how much I can try to say it is not fine to have things be like this, if you from your side are going to say it's fine, I don't really care about that, then no change can really be implemented. And if, even when you're capable of saying something, you also allow those very same reactions to be present, let's say like this. Even if, when it isn't really required for you to just sit down and not in agreement with all the things that occur around you, you still do so. There is also a problem of how can you then realize which of those situations can so easily be changed? How can I... The whole aspect, let's say like this, with a different example will be, or with more direct words, rather I don't think it is so much of an example. It simply is, if I stop trying, how do I know when it is finally fine to try again? How do I know when it is fine for me to try at all? How can I ever realize when it is my time to try anything in any kind of manner to begin with? If I don't even understand what trying means for me, or what trying encompasses, or how should I try, or why should I try, or such doom? Absolutely. Way too much. ah, ah, it's and I don't know. I see the unavoidability of the human spirit in that sense. The unavoidability of, and I just sit down and nod in agreement with all of those things, even if they don't really need to be like that. Also, sorry. Welcome to say. I hope you're well. Today, I don't know, having a hard time getting into any good conclusion. That's how things have been looking so far. Actually, I don't know. I don't think I have had any good one so far today. Ah, that's fine. Very good to hear. Very good. Also, I moved the microphone and somehow now it doesn't capture anything. Not directly anything, literally, but not enough for me to be satisfied. Anyway. I don't know. I feel like it's just strange to see all of that in terms of that it is. I feel like it's to some degree not really that hard of a question, not that hard of an equation. If I have it slowly, let's say like this: if I have slowly lost hope in a possibility for change, then to take back the control of even the smallest portion of that which I can truly change within my own existence, then I can start to believe. And I don't really believe it is entirely true to some degree. I don't believe it is so easy as, yeah, you will become aware of this modification that you can have, and then everything else will follow through. I I don't know. Getting through the solution towards the solution, or having, like, let's say like this: the solution itself is simple, but having the desire at all to follow towards the solution is what you mean, perhaps. I can understand it like that, yeah. I don't know. I don't think it really has that much of a solution in itself. I feel like, let me say like this. I I never actually drew that conclusion before, but it seems pretty understandable for me. Like, one of the many studies that I dedicated myself to trying to understand is the whole aspect of how things like, for example, depression works. Why is this being mentioned? Wait a second. The aspect of getting to understand how much a depressed person is willing to remain in depression does not only impact the depressed person itself, but also increases the risk slash tendency for the offspring. Like, it will be much easier for you to also have depression if your fathers, or if your father or mother or whatever, you know what I mean. If your progenitors had depression, while it will also increase the, or no, it will decrease rather the probability of you getting out of it because of this very same increased risk. I feel like it's to some degree the same idea when it comes to the capacity to fall onto conformity and such. It's not. The more construed we are to follow the rules, the easier it will be for us to do so, and the easier it will be for the offspring to do so. The example that you to the future generations is not that one of, yeah, you know what? You ought to be someone better and someone different and someone who aspires to far more and someone who has their eyes out there. I feel like, in that sense, I have to, I don't know, I I don't like that. But yeah, I feel like unavoidably it is the sad conclusion still, anyways, in that sense. That kind of a problem for me, since I have a problem with motivation. Yeah, it's, I don't know, I feel like unavoidably, to some degree, if I have to be honest. I don't feel like it's something that I don't see in most people. I don't really I don't really want to talk out that with anyone in terms of I don't really want to bother any person who I really know myself to make them realize, yeah, but do you see how little have you been trying out things that you could you have results guaranteed, but you know you have at least the possibility of trying. You have the quote unquote right of trying. You are capable of trying. I cannot guarantee to you that you are going to get the result. Like, let me say it like this. You're not going to be guaranteed to win a race, to win a marathon, to get through an entire marathon. Even less if you know that you are depressed, if you know that you have no will right now, if you have no desire to actually get out of bed, but you know you can try it, you can still get out there, and you can still try to make the changes in order to become the person who can finally win. You know you have the possibilities still existing in the world, despite the current problems which entail your current personal existence. Despite all of that, you still have the possibility of trying things out. And despite having the complete awareness, you still have the chance with that. I guess, to some degree, I have to admit, I don't really like it. I said before, I don't really like to talk about that, and the reality is, I don't really feel like it is all that and useful to talk about that. Because in the end, we taking that first step, yeah. I don't like to talk out that with people because it is incredibly easy. I say that, and we instantaneously go back to the way in which we tend to operate in terms of I don't really want to hear the problems, the not problems, the self-fulfilling prophecies and the ways, the rationalizations which I have imposed onto myself that other people have. I don't need you to be entirely negative, and I don't need you to show me how much of a miserable person can you make yourself be. I want you to notice only the portion of possibility still existing. I was thinking about it from the perspective of, let's say like this. Actually, I do have something to say. The problem is, there is an incredibly beautiful idea related to how much we want to make things be entirely certain. And despite how much we're trying, we have been entirely trying, humanity is in continuous effort to make as most things certain as possible. Despite how much one tries to make certain aspects of oneself, it still remains entirely shapeable, the person that one is and can be. And the problem is, it gets way too complicated, because sometimes one is entirely accustomed even more to these other figures of, and you know what, I am a piece of shit that cannot really accomplish anything. I am somebody who cannot really get to do this. I cannot get snap out of compliance. I am already compliant. Why do you want me to not be compliant? It's not really about what you are. It's what about you else can be. It's not about the current conditions. It's about the benefits of the future and such. We can trail back then, yes, to the problem of, you can see even what's the beautifulness of that. Why say, no, but I don't really have an access to this. It's entirely unnecessary, that much nihilism between or towards the existence that oneself carries, that one willingly imposes onto oneself. It's in one way or another, It's not the right conclusion, but somehow I find it aligning more than anything else with Christianity. The whole notion of you have to atone for your sins. The way in which most people exist is as if you were continuously atoning for sins that you committed maybe even decades ago, in one way or another, punishing yourself and making things operate under that sort of law, in where you have to not enjoy things. You don't get the right to be better. You don't get the right to do better. And you don't get the right to change things around. You are this thing, and you are this problem, and you are this negative stuff. And you don't have the chance to do much more. And it doesn't come out from the perspective of, the environment around you tells you that much. Maybe there is a minimal voice about that, but the biggest imposer of this very same notion is found nowhere else but in the person itself. And that's astounding to me. I need to calm down, actually. Sorry. Most people in this day and age view themselves as a type of sinner and believe that they should, or some type of relaxation. I don't think it's a relaxation. I think it's more of an atonement for your problems. An atonement for the negative things that you have done in one way or another. And I don't know entirely how to translate that. I have that feeling, but I guess I haven't really analyzed that deeply to have a proper, fully fledged explanation for it. Something along the lines of how current men, not men, actual, present human being in itself, how we thought about ourselves, lives. Yeah. Something not entirely shaped. Exactly. Something not entirely explored, basically. Which is, most of the time is what happens here, but this one is even more undescripted like that. But current human being, feels the necessity. We have lived so much through so many negative things, both that do happen, have happened, and will continue to happen, that somehow the spirit becomes, we ought to realize how much of a bad person we are being. Like, for example, the whole basic notion. The saying, I think it's universal. The saying of you have to eat everything that you have in your plate because you're doing a disservice to those poor kids in Africa, to those poor kids in China who are dying of starvation. That sort of torment existing around problems that you can do something about, let's say. Something that if you don't do your part, therefore you are doing a disservice to someone else. Something like that. And in one way or another, that very same sort of chanting or ritualistic thought, that's what I can identify it as the most, sustains itself in ways in which even stuff like a compliance ends up appearing, and stuff like, to some degree, I don't have actually that much of a lack of understanding. In depression, it is the most present, sadly. In most cases, the person doesn't really appear unless the person is entirely, brutally hard on themselves. It is hard to see a person be so depressed if they don't have that aspect of self-flagellation, so to speak. But anyway, give me a second. I do think that some people just want to believe that there is some kind of power that will set everything what we see right. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, that's on a different level, on a other. I do believe people have that sort of idea of something like a god and such. I mean, okay, the atonement for, let's say like this, different words will be, once we get to abandon in modern times, in our current times, ideas like that of God, then we have to rely far more on morality. And the problem with such moral chains is that you ought to have certain attitudes toward certain things. You don't get to not eat your entire plate, even if you're full, even if you don't like the food, because from a moral standpoint, the easiest answer, not the right one, the easiest answer is you might as well be not enjoying what others are deprived of. Don't get to ever enjoy, don't get to ever have in front of them, don't get to ever experience. So the chains become that of guilt in terms of you have to be conscious of what you have to the point to which you can't not have this. It's huge importance on that aspect of you cannot not have this thing be. You cannot remove this order from your current being, from being, so to speak. You're required to remain in this space. You're required to have this punishment even continue upon you, and you have to have this negativity be what affects you, even if you know that it is bad. Compliance comes from a different aspect anyways. I that much I can also say in terms of I guess, I mean, unavoidably they have a lot of correlation in that sense. I don't directly go towards there because it's like, despite how complicated it is, they are entirely interconnected. But yeah, the compliant person, the one who is willing to submit to what you impose to them and such, isn't more than somebody quite lacking in spirit of their own. And in most cases, that is actually certainly somebody which in one way or another is depressed, which in one way or another has lost the hope for something different, is somebody who tried things to be the other way around and found out, no, yeah, you know what, no matter how many times I go out there and have different manifestations, I try to show the rest of the world I'm not that good on an individual level. It can happen, don't worry. It's not. I don't know. I don't think most people really are, but at the same time, I don't think most people really need to be. That's what I can admit. It's the weirdness of somehow existence is only the right, a true right, rather, for those who can be the finest persons ever, and anyone else might as well not be deserving of that. And that's, I have to actually admit, it's quite destructive in its own essence. It's depending the multiple interpretations of good, no? You can even say, I'm not that good, I'm not enough in one way or another, I'm not really that much, I don't represent as much as I really hope for and such. And it's entirely despite the understandableness, not agreeable, because it doesn't mean that it is completely therefore right to say, yeah, I will have to let this be, I will have to let this become anything else. I'm not good right now, so that means that I don't deserve to things. I don't deserve to make things better. If I am not good in this current moment, I don't deserve to make things finally become good. If I am not good individually, I don't deserve to become a good individual anymore. Such ways of thinking. That's understandable, yeah, but also, if I do have the problem of after having lived, I don't feel like I can. It's not entirely my own thoughts. I want to hope that it isn't actually the case. That's what I hear the most out there, the whole aspect of supposedly it's a characteristic of youth to be so rebellious and so willing to try things that for sure will fail in one way or another and such. At some point, the more you get to mature, to maturate, yeah, the more to become a more developed person, basically, to reach the middle stage of adulthood, you also get to realize that sadly there is also still that aspect of as many things as one tries, there might be as almost many failures. Life itself is full of things that one can attempt by themselves, and the sad thing is most of the endeavors of the human person are followed behind for entirely different reasons by uncontrollable sorts of conclusions which one didn't actually want. And it is in that experience of wanting something and never getting the satisfaction of receiving that, not for parenthesis here, there is that theory of even when you get what you want, you aren't really satisfied. No, assuming that you get exactly what you want, you are actually satisfied. Even so, in many cases, one doesn't really get what they wanted at all. When that becomes the case, it's hard to continue wanting anything at all. And it's hard to possess the desire to say that I will continue wanting anything myself. So, morally speaking, I guess, ethically speaking, rather, we can at least agree so far that self-destruction in any way is negative. Like, one of the few basics of society is that certainly killing yourself is bad. Therefore, if that much is a prohibited door to cross, but you don't really believe that you deserve to want anything, you can't want to not be anymore. So, it is easier for you to just follow the currents. And if the currents are the will of the society, if the currents are the will of the world in terms of, yeah, therefore, I will just become compliant with anything that I am shown and agree with anything that is told to me and such. You get to satisfy that sort of question, and you get to satisfy that sort of problem also. I have to, once again, that's why I do have to say, I feel like, I'm not entirely sure, I don't entirely remember that if you are depressed, you are entirely going to be so compliant. That's not as present. It is to some degree present, but not entirely so. in the stuff that I have gotten to read so far. I can agree that certainly, at least if the problem is once again, I want something, or I want multiple things, and all of those things that I wanted, I have wanted, rather, multiple things, and those things that I wanted never got to be mine, therefore, I don't really want anything else myself. I will just agree with what I see is wanted for the rest, by the rest. That's going to be easier. But, anyways, yeah, but depending on the society and how this society views its enemies, it's not crazy to say that they will want certain people to take their own lives. Unavoidably, I mean, I do believe there is, well, it is agreeable. I also feel like unavoidably, you're entirely, despite the show of appearances and the circus of the public displays of opinions and sorts, that doesn't entirely mean that we are all that are receptive towards others. Even today, even right now, so to speak, that doesn't make us all that nice. Or rather, even in this current moment in history, if that emotion might in one way or another be given in certain societies, but that doesn't impede that the person who you hate still possesses their own society, so to speak, you know? Like, your enemies, if they know that they aren't going to be well received by you, won't try to integrate with your society, so to speak. In simpler terms, yeah. If I know that when I get to your block, to your neighborhood, let's say, what I'm going to be told constantly is that I should kill myself, I might as well not want to go there. I will instead stay where I am at least allowed to live. Even if that's a different proposition, but obviously unavoidably, even if the place in which I currently live is a completely horrible place, even if the place in which I encounter myself existing is a completely deplorable land in which I am never happy and I have never any sort of satisfaction, I have an example, but it is incredibly difficult to speak out. What could be a good example? Can I make up anything? I ah fuck. What's no? I don't really have any other example, and I am not going to use it. I don't want to. I am a philosopher. I want I want to keep saying things. I want to get entirely removed out of the world for saying the wrong thing so early in the career. Let's say in the race. Yeah. Fuck no. There has to be another example. Something along the lines of. Yeah, it's going to be obvious. Let's talk out fantasy, okay? If the there is them being whatever, but if there is a problem between the human orcs and elves, where the place where orcs live is harmful to the orcs themselves, but wherever they go, be it to the kingdom of the elves or the humans, the orcs get once again the agreement socially is that they are not welcomed there, that they are not desired there, that to some degree, once again, the final conclusion in this case is, yeah, you might as well kill yourself. We don't want you here, brother orc. Then it makes it needs no further question as to why they are to some degree forced to stay in the orc realm despite everything else, because it's the illusion of the openness. The illusion is that both the humans and elves are willing to take the orcs in, while in reality the hostility of the environment makes it so that if they are to go there, they're not going to be well received. And you can have still the rationality is still anyways absolutely astounding in terms of, oh yeah, but there are such problems, there are such devastating orcs in our societies. They make the human and elves realms so much worse. That's the whole process of getting to slowly integrate, in this case the orcs, to those other societies. Not you cannot just take an orc out of its hood, let's say. Like, I was going to talk about Tolkien representations. I have no fucking clue how Tolkien pictures their houses, so yeah. I know that I think orcs and goblins or something like that are made out of mud. I don't entirely remember that. I never even read the books, but yeah, point is, you have those things there. You have the orcs. You cannot just take an orc out of its, I don't know, tribe and put it in the middle of a human or elf civilization. You have to do the whole process to make them finally understand how to inhabit those spaces without them being rejected. And there is also a higher problem. That's the more complicated problem of, and also allow them to still carry their orc identity. You cannot make an orc become a human. You cannot enforce an orc to go through the process of just humanizing itself or elvening itself, let's say. You have to learn how to let an orc be an orc within the constraints of the human or elf society. And that's not something that we are so capable of doing, even right now, once again. But even so, the theory still goes back to the point of, that doesn't suppose, or that doesn't imply, that the orcs are going, in this case, to never have any possibility of existing anywhere, even if it is a completely toxic environment, even if inside the orc tribes they are killing one another, or they are dying of so many other problems that the rest of those other kingdoms don't have. The orc kingdom at least can hold the orcs for the sake of keeping them there, let's say. But that doesn't make it so that even so the problem gets eliminated. The older, returning to the other conversation, no need to have the analogy exist anymore. Nobody requires, or nobody possesses to some degree. Most people don't possess the entire capacity to hope for things in such a great light after a certain point of being alive, simply. Like, that's the universal of existing in this world, so to speak. No matter what you really hope for, no matter what you really want, the world has its ways around showing you that, yeah, no, human efforts, dreams, and similar are bound in one way or another to crumble and to not be entirely satisfied, and to not lead to the results that you are at a first glance looking towards and working for. And I don't know, I guess if you want something to blame, you have 1,000 things. The society for not making it so that the people which they produce can withstand this. The educational system for, once again, not teaching the younger minds how to deal with the unavoidable failures that are going to occur. I don't know, the communities for not providing those who go through the process of failure with something that can keep them afloat while they find something else to try until they do so. It's complicated. And this is, I feel like, okay, this can be to some degree also why internet itself is so strange. Because the eternal conversation of, I don't entirely remember, it has a proper term, but I don't know it right now. The one where the continuous show, even unavoidable fake appearances of the person who rents a car to appear far more capable financially than you, the person who rents a house to show far more luxurious ways of living than what you could ever afford and such, and unavoidably also even so the cases of actual success which differ so much from your current states of living silently pile up in the mind of most people. It sounds hard actually, but I don't think it is entirely wrong. I wouldn't entirely disregard the aspect that sadly, in one way or another, it is necessary to say that, yeah, people have to admit that it's not really all that amazing. That even if the rest, what I mentioned before, even if your society can give you the tools, even if your educational system can provide you with things to avoid feeling bad for the failures that you have, even if your community can give you sustainment in one way or another, now that you have access to this other thing, you can keep anyways poisoning your own mind with, fuck, and I don't have that. And I will keep wanting what I see out there, and I will never reach that, and I will keep finding out how much more I can still desire. In terms of, it's not, one thing is envy, a different thing is I get to realize what others have present in themselves, which I know if I had would be nice, which I know, like, I don't want to be in the place of someone else. I just want to have something like that myself, because I know that it will make my existence better in one way or another, or at least I presuppose that. I don't really know, so. Welcome. Mo. Hope you're doing very good, brother. Let me actually take a sip. Oh my god. How are things? I don't know. I would say actually pretty doomer so far. I don't think I have like any good thoughts so far today. I cannot really say that. I didn't have any any positive highlight so far. Like you skim through the last 2 hours, there haven't been that many. I think so. I don't feel like that's the case, but despite that, fine. Very good, very happy. I am quite fine, quite joyous with existence on a personal level, I guess. Getting to continue living, getting to actually continue streaming more than anything else. So good, very good actually. Happy, very happy. Despite that's something that I have to admit. I don't know. I feel like I actually worry about that. Like, yeah. Whenever conversations of this sort happen, they all feel so incredibly nihilistic, So I might as well get the impression that I am in one way or another, I don't know, that negative myself, but I don't think so. I am happy anyways. I am very good, thank you. So yeah, I hope you're also doing good, brother. Can I simplify it to mo? No, it has to be mo at the very least. Mo, mo, mo. No, wait, sorry. But yeah, and besides that, I don't know. What has been so far the topic? What, I don't know, about? What is it? Compliance. Yeah, that has been most of what has been discussed. Yeah, and I don't know. I guess it's complicated. I actually have to admit. I don't know. It's in one way or another. It ends up always feeling strange. It's. I feel like in one. Yeah, let me say like this. In one way or another, it's one of those conversations that you. I don't really want to have it, but I feel like it's still nice to at least understand its existence. Let's say like that. Yeah, it's present in one way or another. Also, I am fucking toying around with a fucking paper bag. Sorry. I I stopped realizing what I was doing with my hands like 2 minutes ago. Sorry. Uh, uh I was saying. I was saying. The motherfucker trying to say something serious. Meanwhile, in the background, motherfucker. Sorry. It's to take a little bit of heaviness out of life. You have to laugh a little bit, brother. You have to not take it so seriously. It's fine. It's fine. Things can be heavy like that, but it's fine to talk about them. It's good. It's good to have that exist, and it's nice to have the possibility to talk about such things. I don't know. That's anyway. What's trying to say? And yeah, I feel like in one way or another, even if they don't entirely get to be all that good of conversations, not good, not positive, yeah, it's useful enough. I I feel like there are way too many aspects that one might entirely find unnecessary to discuss, but I don't know. I prefer the cautiousness of slowly seeing where I might be heading towards if I stop paying any attention myself, than to just crash at some wall that I could have entirely avoided, let's say. So, yeah, that is most of what has been happening. Yeah, thank you. And besides that, I don't know, man. I trying to do a quick summary to see exactly where I left. We're in the middle of the whole aspect of compliance, and yeah, to begin with, there is a certain aspect of the compliant person that I feel is unavoidably sad. I don't really feel like it is that useful to talk out because. Okay, yeah, I can say it like that actually. I don't feel like it is that useful to mention in any kind of way how something like compliance operates in its entirety, because after all, if I have to see how the person slowly seeps into the life of anyone who becomes like that, if that sort of negativity becomes rooted on the existence of most and such, I don't really want to admit to such things. I don't really want to be the person who has to go out there and say, yeah, you know what? Maybe to some degree, almost universally, we are currently having problems with this sort of stuff, and we are somehow finding ourselves having so many iterations of compliance, because in the end, it might as well not be all that wrong. That sadly, indeed, we are having a problem right now where we find ourselves not being all that positive and not being all that capable of still believing in what we want to believe ourselves, believing in what we need to believe ourselves, believing in what we wish to have present for ourselves. Instead, we can only rely on what we know might as well quote unquote work out for the rest, because any other possession of an idea of our own is unworthy of any thought, is unnecessary to actually have, as I don't really know if I could ever make any other wish of mine come true, as I can understand already how many other times I have wanted things, and I have been met only with failure, in one way or another, for one reason or another. And I don't want to say that. I don't want to be, I don't know, I don't think I have the capacity to say that in any kind of manner. I want to think out that to begin with. It doesn't sound right enough for me. But I don't know, I don't really have that much of another answer. It's compliance also comes from the side of, but it makes it far easier for me to not take any kind of action. Why? Because I don't want to fail? Why? Why am I so afraid of failure there? Because I simply don't want to what? To see things not work out? Why will I not be capable of seeing things not work out? Why will I not have the capacity to see things of that kind? Simply not get to be what I hoped on the beginning. Is it so bad to admit that I might not want that to be the case? But I don't know. Besides that, in a more deeper level, there was also the whole conversation also of salary, and I don't know. It's complicated. I feel like, and yeah, socially speaking, compliance has almost always been the easier tool. I want to. I have an answer. I have an answer. It also comes from the side of becoming compliance. I don't really want to sacrifice so much, and I don't want to. The base rule is in existence. I ought to not kill myself. So, I won't in any kind of way aspire for something that might put my own life in danger. I instead prefer to just do something that won't entirely satisfy me, because that means that I get to live another day. I know how great it is to die standing, but I don't really have anything meaningful to die standing for right now. So I won't become uncompliant for a simple issue. Like, all of this started because I was talking about the Discord, like, how do you get, you watch the first minutes of me actually going on a rant, and you're going to be like, how the fuck did we get here? Minecraft achievement. How did we get here? Achieved. And I was saying, in a different sense also, the whole moral dilemma of, I don't know, I feel like suddenly it's not even a question of something related to deities, to the conception of a god of any kind or such. It's more to the way in which you can think about the morality of things and the reasonings of our times in terms of the logicality impressed behind what we are capable of doing and saying, what we can justify in hoping for and such. It makes no sense also to not comply if you know that it won't make your life not as full of suffering. Suffering isn't entirely in the moral equations. Suffering is quite a wrench in the entire calculations, let's say like that. It's hard to convince oneself that it's necessary to suffer to begin with. So nobody wants to do that. Nobody needs to do that. Nobody has to do that. And the moment in which you see somebody else suffering, at least you can take choice in the fact that you are doing your part enough by being compliant enough with the things that you can be compliant with in order to not make those who are suffering suffer even more, let's say. I guess, okay, conclusion in one way or another will be something along the lines of, yeah, and we're in incredibly strange times. We have certainly encapsulated ourselves in not really that much of a positive mentality. Globally speaking, like, I don't mean just I, myself, or the culture in which I live, like the city in which I live, or the country in which I live, or the continent even in which I live. And I don't know, I guess from that point onwards, it's difficult to find many more answers anyways. It's fine to try to do so, but at least that much we can do, but it doesn't mean that there might be an entirely clear one, I guess. Unavoidably, the first conclusion, like, it doesn't really need that much of a thought. Yeah, the first easiest one is unavoidably, we shouldn't be as compliant. Because we don't need to be. We have to not be. But how do we convince? Once again, I already, to some degree, already said it. Like, yeah, you slowly get to see yourself become better at doing what you thought you weren't capable of doing. The first root of the problem lies in the realization that, yeah, what I wanted before wasn't really achievable by me. So I don't really have the right to try much more, any more else, because I don't really have the possibility of achieving such things at all. So trying will always lead inevitably to failure. So any thought of my own might as well be unnecessary. So therefore I will unavoidably simply follow the line that has been set in front of me by the rest of the world. For that, even if it isn't satisfying, will be enough to keep me afloat until my time ends. And this is all done and I don't have to think about anything anymore. I don't know. Want something else. How can I begin to want something else? It's the saying without the thought behind is simple enough. Yeah. Simply don't want something so unachievable. How the fuck do I know what's achievable and what isn't achievable? What are we talking about? Want something of a different kind. That will be simpler. Want something that doesn't fall under the line of, yeah, you can achieve this or you can fail at achieving this, which only lives in the game of opposites of either you have this or you don't, either you get this or you don't, either you are good at this or you are trash at this, in a different sense, a different modality, yeah. But I guess at that point already the question becomes then, and what is of that kind? Because welcome back to society, to the majority of society. Something funny is, and if in our majority we are compliant, then in our majority we only live in such a world of polarities, of the black and white, of the yes and no and such. There is no in between, no middle point, and nothing like that. Because nothing has to be that complicated under those rules. Nothing deserves to be that complicated under those rules. And I don't know, it's strange, I guess. You want to live a life because, okay, that's sort of the answer. You just need to want to, in one way or another, live existence. Not for the sake of having done so. But because you know that you can do something else. You know that you can see what it can offer, or at least you can try to do so. Yeah, and I don't know. It's way too much of a journey, and life is always like that. Even for the compliant person, it already is one. If there is something funny, it's how the world in itself has such a wide variety of things to offer for every single one alive. Even in the simplest states of existence, even in the biggest monotony of the day to day, there is so much still to go through that one can't stop trying at all to think out what might be next that could be different. For there is already an appalling enough amount of things to experience in that same monotony, and I don't know. I think I can say it like this, yeah. I feel like suddenly it is hard to just say, yeah, but you have to simply ignite that again somehow. The desire to want anything at all. The desire to desire, let's say. The flame of interest and hope and such. Once again, the main question still remains. Why do I deserve to do so? Why would anyone deserve to do that? How could I believe that I want to do that? That I should want to do that? And I don't know, it's just somehow, I guess, paradoxically, having not so many questions about if I ought to do these things or not. I said something about the weight of morality. Not so much about that. Much more simplified in the aspect of I can do that. Unavoidably, it's easy to say that. Then next conclusion, and so I automatically become a tyrant. I automatically then fall under the issues of becoming an immoral person, completely incapable of understanding what I should be desiring and such. Just not having that so attached, so absolutely fundamentalized into the ways of being. I guess you can say it like this actually. One of the funny things that happened was in the insertion of morality as the conversation kept going on, as the discussion kept evolving in one way or another. It happened that sadly morality took the first place for a lawless world already showed to not really be that much of an impressive land, and a meaningless place has become enough of a world in which no one was entirely happy. But let's say like this. The average person gets shown one too many impositions on the moral sense which only harness their ways of being, not elevate their existence onto a wider state of excellence. Let's say like that, yeah. And the continuity of states which we pass through makes it so that we can fall under the idea that it is unnecessary to try in any kind of way to evolve, but I wouldn't so willingly say that. I don't agree with that directly myself. I know that it is said, but it doesn't mean that I believe it myself. I don't know. It is fine to be wrong. I wouldn't have been saying all of this to begin with if I didn't if I didn't stick to that conclusion myself. Yeah. And it is nice to have the possibility of saying, ah, yeah. And all of that was so meaningless. But now I can therefore dedicate myself to something else. It's just strange to see how all of that gets in one way or another avoided. Not because it matters, but simply because it is what I have always been. How can I then now be another thing entirely? I don't know. It's fine. Existence is not tied to one specific mode of its being. Doesn't necessitate, require, for us that all of us always stay on the exact same line, no matter what. It's good to have change, even more so when it leads to those things that bring, in one way or another, happiness. Because I don't know, I guess I didn't say that somehow, or it is implied, yet again. It is implied in the idea, but there is something wonderful about making things explicit. Yeah, being so complacent, so compliant with things, so willing to just follow what is and nothing else, doesn't really lead to that much happiness. And it's not even surprising. It's not something that you should need to think so hard about. Once again, I have to do things that I don't really like. I have to work on things that I don't really enjoy. I have to sacrifice my being for stuff of that sort without any kind of actual happiness. And no, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's not really fun in any kind of manner, actually. And yeah. Welcome, Christian. I believe it's worth trying, so. Yeah. I mean, think about it like this. Even that faintest of light is much nicer than the absolute obscurity of something like actual hopelessness. I don't know. In the expression of when you look at the abyss, I don't even see it sometimes looking back. I don't see sometimes the people who are so submerged in that looking anywhere, but just continuing, let's say, with what little they get to have. They allow themselves to have. I understand how much I want that to be present. That's something that I can say, yeah. Make your own happiness from the little things? Yeah, from there you start. But I don't know. I believe it also is... Okay. I won't really explain it. But I don't really agree with the idea of, yeah, you deserve. That's not the proper language. It's somewhere else. You have the possibility of trying more than just your little handful of happy things, your little handful of satisfying things. You possess the chance to see far more. Just like many others. If you need to say it like that, yes, unavoidably you have the right, you deserve to, you are allowed to, unavoidably, but I don't believe it begins with that way of saying it. It's simple moment of happiness, one second of joy throughout the day, one instant of joy throughout the day, amidst the misery of the rest of it, is not really that much of a good life. It's nice to have even that second, one second, compared to nothing. It's beautiful, it's poetic, entirely amazing, absolutely awesome. But as long as you can have more, you should go for more. It's, I don't know, I don't entirely yet being so self punishing. Yeah, yeah. Or something else along the lines of not only having a goal, even if you already had your goal and you finally satisfied it, it's fine still to not just fall down into yeah. Now there is nothing else. I shall I the it's a popular saying, no? The whole aspect of yeah, once many people once they get to accomplish what they really wanted, they realize how that thing doesn't really match that much for them in any kind of way. I am not really satisfied with what I accomplished, even if I spent every single day of my life wanting this before. Even if I centered my life around accomplishing this one goal, it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't make myself happy now that I have it in my hands. It also is about it's it's about both things in this case, let's say like that. It's about both the possession of those little things, but also of that other higher interest of sorts. Or the multitude of them, I don't know. I feel like it's fine. It's beautiful to know that there is so much to go for. I don't really like. No, yeah, I can say that much I can actually say. You're destined to just to be this one thing. What? The human is nothing if pure and expressed potential in so many ways. And it might take time, it might take years or decades, but it's completely fine. It's completely acceptable. I am more than willing to give anyone who needs that all the time that they have to take to reach those greater stages later on. Compared to just one even shorter than what the briefness of human life already gets to be is, or you have spent your unique life's purpose already and there is nothing else to go for. The goal, and after that another goal. It's more than nice. And assuming somehow that you can truly find anything like that, even so still not falling down once again into the compliance of and from here on out I don't need it. I must not believe that I shall go through that happiness. Anyhow, I do not agree. What's the problem? It's we have moved way far from the other question of but how do we even begin? The reality, I can give you this much. It's not talking about the question. It's the beautifulness of these sort of questions. It's way too difficult to answer stuff of that sort in any kind of manner. Very much because you don't really want to have anything like that in any kind of light. You don't really feel like it is necessary to have those things exist. You don't really want to truly believe like it is necessary to have those things be. For the possession of these very hopes is very much unachievable in one way or another, unaccomplishable in one way or another. For the reality is that it's not the first time somebody is going to ask this themselves, and I don't think it's going to be the very last one, unavoidably. So, there is always something appealing to. But let's not keep thinking about this. The beautiness of. Can there be a definite answer to what is the purpose in life? Humanity has, from the very beginning, trying to answer that. You think there is going to be one answer? So yeah. And I don't know. Trying to go back. Also, I didn't take a... No, I didn't take off the clock, sorry. Why did... I muted the clock, what happened there? What the fuck? Sorry. But yeah, I was saying. And I don't know. It also is the... multiple phases of that in general. You don't do it. One doesn't really want to consider. Once again, this whole point was about the compliance of the human being, how one falls into submission and into the simple-mindedness of following what gets decided for oneself by others. The unnecessariness of having to spend your energies on choosing and being and hoping and such. And I don't know, I feel like it sounds too much of a positive thing to say unavoidably the problem lies only on the person, only on the singular state of existence of me myself being so willing to say that it is bad to have that. Be like, quote unquote, in most cases you could believe that falling into compliance is easier than anything else. That doesn't really mean that it is truly so the case. This only makes it so that you can justify not having to address the rest. Because it's not just simply easier for me. Once again, I sort of even hinted that it's amazing that they actually ignore that. It's difficult to hope for much more when the rest of the world is so still. Even right now. Hostile in one way or another. Even right now I'm willing to say, yeah. So, you can be non-compliant. You can do something outside of the norm. You can go for that which is different, or you can try to change the order of things, even. These are strange times, certainly. They have always been. I feel like to some degree they have always been. Whenever I hear that expression, I always feel like, I don't know. I don't really can identify that many normal times. When was it normal? when we were hanging witches, when we were killing sinners, when we were bombing nations. When was it normal, brother? When we were at war with other tribes. Ah, but the point is, okay, I think this is it. The overwhelmingness of the notion, the weight that it can have. Think how change in any kind of way can be intimidating. Think how making things not continue their current path can throw our ends into our current life and shatter maybe so many of the crystals that sustain our very being in its present time. I feel like it's tempting. I have to say it like that. I feel like it's one of the most tempting notions. Ah, yeah. It's so bad out there. It's so dangerous. It's so negative. To some degree, trying something else will generate friction. But to some other degree, trying something else can still be done. I don't know. I always feel like that. There are ways to work things out. The whole saying of you need to quit yourself tomorrow, you know? You need to disappear from where you are right now to live the life that you want to live, actually. The slow transition into those things is what matters. I feel like the hyperactivity of the world feels far more convincing than what it should actually be. Lands on a much more serious place than where it should truly be. Once again, it's nice to take years with things. I am more than happy, even if it requires a decade or two to reach goals. It's acceptable. I I I can say it like this. I'm not entirely convinced, but I have formed within myself the opinion that somehow perhaps, despite everything else that happens within humanity, we don't really exist in a mode of being in which you can entirely understand how good it is, how nice it can be to make changes towards the goals that we want to pursue. For in current times, we still have to believe that life is all too short. Despite how we are slowly reaching that initial mark of at least most of us, in one way or another, might get to live 100 years. By the time you reach your 50s, you should be done with most of what you ever wanted. That's the impression that I get out of the current world. And I don't know. I guess it's just strange to feel like that. Yeah. days, let's say like this, do not leave it so unanswered. Because it can be true, it can be true. Days can entirely blend into weeks. Hours can feel like minutes, and a year can pass into very blink of an eye. But the more I try to work on things, the more I can in one way or another feel like it all gets to slow down. The more I allow myself to think about those goals, hopes, dreams, all of that, the more I can feel like it slowly paces itself down back to a normal rate. Only if I let go of the wheel, then it accelerates. Only if I lose my autonomousness, is it that things get incredibly fast. And one moment blends with the next one. Meaning, agency. But I don't know, unavoidably it is still actually true, the whole idea of much control can be asphyxiating. Asphyxiating? How do you say that? Overwhelming enough to not make the rest of your days feel good. The more you can control, the more you can see that you can try to control too, the more you can try to change, the more you can get dissatisfied by what remains to be in one way or another modified. Yes, I was thinking it was gonna be shorter, but I guess we're going to take a break, and after that, we're going to continue. Ah, yeah, yeah. For the love of God, somehow we finally did it. We broke through the 3 minute mark. No, 3 minutes. What the fuck are you talking about? 3 hour mark. Yeah, I'll be back, I guess. And once again, somehow we got here talking about fucking Discord. Amazing. See you in like a minute. Thank you. Really? I have to say, I haven't talking way too much. I can I can feel my throat slowly dying. Not entirely, but uh, at some point we find enough things to run away from what we thought we wanted to do even. Is it that bad to have talked that much? Not really, not really. It simply is a useful excuse, if you think about it. Ah, anyway, it's such an average response. All that I have to say, control can be without things. In its right measurement, it's the already known thing. Everything. With it's enough, does it? Sometimes you don't really have to think about it. To some rules we will have to comply. In some way you have to have a control about life. In one matter or another you have to not fight against things, and that's fine, but I guess the problem is sometimes I can say it like this actually. If I have to pinpoint something, actually, it is somehow how our Western society is so unwilling to admit those brave things as passable for anything useful in its own. It makes no sense that something so short could be good. And sometimes things that are not that complicated, sometimes it's fine to actually just not look for something much, much deeper, or from those basic things, extract all the rest of the series of meaning and importance in one way or another. Because in the end, what else is there to say? Unavoidably, control, properly done, willingness and hopefulness imprinted onto things out of a personal desire and not much more. But you can always look for the deeper sense yourself. Maybe I feel like it's the entirely wrong path somehow. I don't know. I don't. We will see. But somehow the Western mentality makes you believe that you're going to be unable to somehow ever extract the meaning from such things yourself. So much work put in order to make it look like, indeed, it is negative to shorten things to such degrees. And this, I will take a pause for a second. This is a distraction, but for a second, just to answer that, yeah, it's unavoidably real That no, and I don't mean, therefore Eastern tradition is much better at this. No, but at least they allow those things to exist in a serious manner. You can have such problems and look at the answers given by these simple answers. And you know that maybe you keep thinking about them, there might be something they owe to them if they served others. What the Western society fails to have is anything of that sort, any briefness of that kind, any simplicity. Exerted onto our world is taken only as a detriment. All things have to be incredibly complex. I don't know. Existence is not as intricate in all of the other complicated aspects that it gets to have. The basis of it is not so lost in the discursivity of those, not twisted in the sense of evil, but twisted in the sense of taking 1,000 detours until they finally get to the point, taking 1,000 pages until they reach a conclusion, making it so that you lose yourself amongst all the percentile analysis. All of that is sometimes necessary. Not all life has such voids of answers. It's not because the shorter path is the easiest one. It's because that one already had something useful enough on it. It's much better to do things consciously, measuredly, with enough censorship from one's own senses and mind and hope and spirit and such. But no. And I don't know. That still doesn't really answer the question, really. How do we even begin? That's the real question, once again. How do you even begin to have control over what? I guess we can go back to that. You begin on the small things. You begin on the day-to-day. You begin on the attitudes. I don't know. I don't... It's a ruinous analysis, because it's a depressing one in itself. Not with a sad conclusion, but because the very revelation of that is angering. Are we all violent? Maybe. Because it begins with the attitude. It begins with the words that one utilizes about things, with the stuff that one does towards the hopes and such, it's not so difficult to begin. In itself it might be, but not where exactly to do so from. That initial space is far simpler than what it actually looks like from the simple way of behaving, not the coldness of the current world, I guess. Not the distance of everything that we get shown and one without any second thought takes on. Without that very same, that's why I said, hostility towards the other person. It doesn't even matter if it is an unknown or known other. That's the funny thing. And from there, it escalates once again into all the rest. I don't know. I guess I don't really have any other question to try to answer so far. I think we're kinda done for today. Maybe. It was good enough, actually. Anyways, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy. ah, but that's the value of worlds. That's the usefulness of them, I guess. Ay, ay. Happy. It's not. At the least I can say that, yeah. It doesn't get to be depressing after 3 hours. Yeah. So yeah, very good, very good. Once again, then. For now, we're done. It was very good. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the time, the patience, the interest, the attention. All of that is as always. Remember to take care, to hydrate, to rest, to hope for things. Do not simply fall under compliance. Today more than any other day, yes, yeah. And yeah, I love that. As always, have a good one. And yeah, I don't know. We're pretty much done. For now, we will say goodbye. And whenever we can, we're getting back here. But even if that doesn't happen, even if that never occurs again, anyhow, do your part. That's what really matters. That's what truly counts. And what's your part? I already said that. All of the other things that go with being alive. So yeah. Nothing else to really. Thank you. Bye bye.